At the top and bottom of our world lie two extraordinary realms, locked in ice and snow, the Arctic and the Antarctic. These polar regions, seemingly barren and desolate, are in fact teeming with life, uniquely adapted to survive in these extreme conditions. But these frozen landscapes are changing, and the consequences are far-reaching, affecting not just the creatures that inhabit these regions, but the entire planet. The Arctic, a vast ocean surrounded by continents, is home to iconic species like polar bears, walruses, and seals. The Antarctic, on the other hand, is a continent surrounded by ocean, a landmass twice the size of Australia, buried under a thick ice sheet. Penguins, whales, and seals thrive in the icy waters surrounding this frozen continent. These polar regions may seem remote, but they play a crucial role in regulating the Earth's climate. The vast expanse of ice and snow reflects sunlight back into space, helping to cool our planet. But as temperatures rise, the ice melts, setting in motion a chain reaction with global consequences. The polar ice caps are not just frozen wastelands, they are vital components of our planet's climate system. Their white surfaces act like giant mirrors, reflecting sunlight back into space and helping to regulate global temperatures. This process, known as the albedo effect, is crucial for maintaining a stable climate on Earth. The ice caps also play a vital role in ocean currents, driving the global circulation of ocean water. Cold, dense water from the poles sinks and flows towards the equator, while warmer water from the tropics flows towards the poles. This circulation pattern helps distribute heat around the planet, moderating global temperatures. However, as global temperatures rise, the polar ice caps are shrinking at an alarming rate. This melting ice not only contributes to rising sea levels, but also disrupts ocean currents and reduces the planet's ability to reflect sunlight, further accelerating climate change. Our planet is warming, and the polar regions are warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. This warming trend is primarily driven by human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels, which release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. These gases trap heat and cause the planet's average temperature to rise. The consequences of this warming are particularly pronounced in the Arctic and Antarctic. As temperatures rise, glaciers and ice sheets melt at an accelerated rate, contributing to rising sea levels. The loss of ice also disrupts the delicate balance of polar ecosystems, threatening the survival of iconic species like polar bears, penguins, and seals. The melting of permafrost, a layer of permanently frozen ground found in the Arctic, releases methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere, further accelerating climate change. The warming of the Arctic is also opening up new shipping routes and increasing human activity in the region, putting further pressure on fragile ecosystems. The melting of the polar ice caps is one of the most visible and concerning impacts of climate change. As temperatures rise, glaciers and ice sheets melt at an accelerated rate, adding vast amounts of fresh water to the oceans. This influx of water is causing sea levels to rise globally, threatening coastal communities and infrastructure around the world. The rate of sea level rise is accelerating, and even a small increase can have devastating consequences. Low-lying island nations are particularly vulnerable, facing the risk of being submerged entirely. Coastal cities and communities around the world are also at risk from flooding, erosion, and saltwater intrusion into freshwater supplies. The economic and social costs of rising sea levels are immense, requiring significant investments in adaptation measures such as seawalls, elevated infrastructure, and relocation of populations. The melting of the polar ice caps is a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our planet and the global consequences of climate change. Section 5. The Arctic on thin ice. The Arctic, a region of breathtaking beauty and ecological significance, is warming at twice the rate of the rest of the planet. This rapid warming is having a profound impact on the region's ice cover, wildlife, and indigenous communities. The Arctic Ocean, once covered in thick, multi-year ice, is now dominated by thinner, seasonal ice that melts away during the summer months. This loss of ice has dire consequences for iconic Arctic species like polar bears, which rely on sea ice for hunting seals, their primary food source. As sea ice shrinks, polar bears are forced to spend more time on land, where they face starvation and conflict with humans. The melting of permafrost, a layer of permanently frozen ground that covers much of the Arctic, is releasing methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere, further accelerating climate change. The warming of the Arctic is also opening up new shipping routes and increasing human activity in the region, bringing both opportunities and challenges for the Arctic's fragile ecosystems and indigenous communities. Section 6. Guardians of the Arctic, polar bears and their plight. The polar bear, a majestic symbol of the Arctic, is facing an uncertain future as climate change melts away its icy hunting grounds. Polar bears are perfectly adapted to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth, relying on their intelligence, strength, and remarkable swimming abilities to hunt seals, their primary food source. However, as sea ice shrinks, polar bears are forced to spend more time on land, where they face starvation, exhaustion, and conflict with humans. Female bears struggle to find suitable dens to give birth and raise their cubs, and the survival rate of cubs is declining. The plight of the polar bear is a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of ecosystems and the far-reaching impacts of climate change. Protecting polar bears and their habitat requires global action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and mitigate the effects of climate change. Section 7. The Antarctic, a continent under pressure. Antarctica, the southernmost continent, is a land of extremes. It is the coldest, windiest, and driest continent on Earth, covered in a massive ice sheet that holds about 90% of the world's freshwater ice. This frozen continent, once considered pristine and remote, is facing increasing pressure from climate change and human activities. The Antarctic Peninsula, the northernmost and warmest part of the continent, is experiencing some of the most rapid warming on the planet. This warming is causing glaciers to retreat, ice shelves to collapse, and sea ice to melt, contributing to rising sea levels. The warming of the southern ocean surrounding Antarctica is also impacting marine ecosystems, affecting the distribution and abundance of krill, a tiny crustacean that forms the base of the Antarctic food web. Changes in krill populations have cascading effects on penguins, seals, whales, and other marine life that depend on krill for survival. Section 8. Penguins in Peril. A story of adaptation and survival. Penguins, the iconic flightless birds of the southern hemisphere, are facing a challenging future as climate change transforms their icy home. These remarkable creatures, perfectly adapted to life in and around water, are facing a multitude of threats, from shrinking sea ice to overfishing and pollution. Different penguin species face different challenges. Emperor penguins, the largest of all penguin species, rely on stable sea ice for breeding and raising their chicks. As sea ice shrinks and becomes less reliable, emperor penguin populations are declining. Adelie penguins, another Antarctic species, are also facing challenges as their food sources, such as krill, become less abundant due to warming waters and overfishing. These penguins are being forced to travel further and dive deeper to find food, putting additional stress on their populations. Section 9. Our shared responsibility. Protecting the poles. The polar regions, though geographically distant, are intimately connected to the rest of the planet through the atmosphere, oceans, and climate system. What happens in the poles does not stay in the poles. It affects us all. The melting of the polar ice caps, the rising sea levels, and the plight of polar wildlife are stark reminders of the global consequences of climate change. Protecting the poles requires a collective effort from individuals, communities, governments, and industries around the world. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions through a transition to clean energy sources, investing in sustainable practices, and supporting policies that address climate change are crucial steps in the right direction. The future of the polar regions, and indeed the planet, depends on our willingness to act now and make sustainable choices for a healthier and more sustainable future. By working together, we can protect these vital ecosystems and preserve the delicate balance of our planet for generations to come.